It seems like every time a major crisis kicks off to Europe's south, this deep, almost predictable fault line just cracks open across the continent. And the thing is, the argument is never really just about the crisis itself. It's bigger than that. It's about a fundamental argument Europe is having with itself. So what is going on here? Why does Europe seem to fracture this way, time and time again? We see it in the headlines about Iran or Libya or the Red Sea crisis, but the real reasons go so much deeper. It's a fundamental disagreement about Europe's very identity and really its place in the world. All right, to really get to the bottom of this, we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the pattern of this split. Then we'll tackle the old labels we always use because they don't really work. After that, I'll introduce a new, much better way to see this: the Citadel and the Shore. We'll look at real-world examples, and finally, we'll explore what it all means for Europe's future. Yeah, so recent crises, whether it's in the Middle East or North Africa, they really throw this internal European split into the spotlight. But the crucial thing to get is that these arguments are not just about the crisis of the day. Nope, they are a symptom of a much deeper debate about the very vantage point from which Europe even sees the world to its south. And this is the absolute key. We often try to simplify this whole thing, right? We frame it as a battle between toughness and caution, the hardliners versus the diplomats. But that completely misses the point. The real divide is positional. It's all about where you're standing and what the war looks like from your window. Which brings us to one of the biggest problems in how we talk about this. If we're ever going to really understand this divide, we have to throw out the old, lazy labels we always hear. I'm talking, of course, about the hawk versus dove narrative. It just doesn't explain what's actually happening. The source material for this explainer just nails it. It says these old labels reduce a positional split into a matter of mood. And that's the problem in a nutshell. When you call a country a hawk or a dove, it makes it sound like their position is just a temporary attitude or a political choice. But it's not. It's baked into their geography, their history, their strategic reality. This kind of language is, just as the source says, too thin. It can't explain why some governments, the moment a crisis hits, immediately start talking about missiles and deterrence, while others at that exact same moment are talking about international law and the price of fuel. They're not just in different moods, they are practically living in different worlds, experiencing the crisis from completely different starting points. So if the old labels are basically useless, what should we use instead? Well, this is where it gets really interesting. The source gives us a much more powerful framework for understanding this positional divide. It's called the Citadel and the Shore. Okay, first up, Citadel Europe. This is the part of Europe that sees itself as being inside the systems that can manage a war from up high. Its whole mindset revolves around grand strategy, architecture, pressure, deterrence. The core belief here is that you can manage the global order from above to discipline the threat. But then you've got Shore Europe. This is the perspective from the front line, from the place where war stops being a theory on a map and becomes a series of very real, very tangible arrivals. Shore Europe thinks in terms of opening strikes, fuel prices, shipping risks, and strain on its borders. For them, war is experienced as consequences that just wash up on your coast and can't be contained. And this difference in perspective means they start by asking completely different questions. The Citadel, which is all about control, immediately asks, how is this threat going to be disciplined? It's a question of strategic management. But the Shore, which is facing the direct impact, asks something else entirely. Who lit this fire, and who is going to get stuck cleaning up the mess? It's all about cause and effect. Their deepest fears are also total opposites. For the Citadel, the biggest danger is losing control over this long-term threat. But for the Shore, the fear is that the very attempt to restore control is what unleashes all the uncontrollable fallout in the first place. You see? They have totally different intuitions about where the real danger is. So this Citadel and Shore framework sounds pretty powerful in theory, right? But let's bring it back down to earth. How does this split actually show up in real-world European foreign policy? Well, this isn't some one-off thing. It is a durable, predictable pattern. You see it in the debate over recognizing Palestine. Some countries act to try and stop a disaster, while others insist on sticking to a managed, diplomatic process. You see it in the Red Sea crisis, where port cities feel the supply chain disruptions way before the strategic planners in capital cities do. It's a deep, structural reality of Europe. Let's get really specific with the crisis over Iran's actions. The split was almost a textbook example of our framework. On the shore side, you had countries like Spain, Norway, Italy, and Turkey. Their immediate reaction was to frame it in terms of international law and the risk of spillover. Spain even went so far as to refuse the use of its bases for a potential response. Meanwhile, on the Citadel side, you had the big three: France, Germany, and the UK. Their first instinct was all about strategic condemnation, preserving the nuclear deal, and managing the regional balance of power. Same event, two completely different sets of reflexes. And this all brings us to the final and maybe the most profound point. This isn't just a simple policy disagreement. This Citadel versus Shore split reveals a deep, enduring, and unresolved question Europe keeps asking itself about its own identity. And that's really the big takeaway here. If you want to understand Europe, you have to stop using language that is, quote, too thin for the realities involved. We need a vocabulary that actually captures these deep positional differences, not just, superficial differences in mood or political flavor. So what is Europe fundamentally? Is it a manager of the disorder on its borders, looking down from a protected command structure? Or is it a receiver of that disorder, an exposed coast that just has to absorb the consequences? The really complicated answer is it's both, at the exact same time. And that leaves us with this one final, lingering question. When the Middle East is burning, from where does Europe think it's watching? Is it from the protected interior of the Citadel, hoping to manage the flames? Or is it from the exposed shoreline, asking who lit the match in the first place and just bracing for the fallout? As long as Europe has to live in both of these positions at once, the split isn't going away. It's going to keep coming back.